Ghana City is going out to 4 lucky individuals, but only if you play *439 hash. *439 hash. It's a brand new week. Let's line your pockets with some money. What would you do with 1,000 Ghana Cedis this morning? You have to choose option 2. For TV3, it'll cost you 5 cedis to play, and you just sit back, relax, and watch that money come straight onto your mobile device. It is *439 hash. Let me say a very big thank you to Addis Beauty for my lovely hairstyle this morning. That's Addis, ADIS_beauty on all of the socials. And of course, you are an integral part of the big issue this morning. Do send us your thoughts, your messages, your suggestions, even your questions. They're absolutely welcome. The hashtag we're using this morning, it's New Day on TV3, hashtag the big issue. And we've tabled some 2 important issues that you and I need to sink our teeth into. Before I lay the foundation, though, let me say good morning and a very warm welcome to my panel. This morning, I'm joined in the studio by lawyer Eduji Tamaklo, acting CEO, National Petroleum Authority. And it's very instrumental that he's here this morning to answer a few questions. Eduji, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, and good morning to my co-panelists. I'm pretty well.
Short and succinct this morning.
Yeah.
No long talk.
But, I mean, in situations like this, I pay it here. But I need to do this. There's this senior brother of mine. He's been a brother and friend, and a good guy, usually. And today happens to be his birthday, Mr. Kwejochu Mwafo. The Financial Intelligence Center, the boss there, he's been a very good senior brother to me, and I just want to wish him a happy birthday. Thank you.
All right. Fantastic. Also in studio this morning, Andrew Apia Dankwa, spokesperson, Movement for Change, also private legal practitioner. Andrew, it's good to see you as always.
Yeah, same here. Good morning, to your viewers. Good morning to my brother Eduji and Prof. And let me tell Eduji that Kwejochu Mwafo isn't just his big brother; he's also my big brother.
Oh, okay.
He's a fantastic guy.
Accra.
Yeah. But beyond Accra, we have I think a good relationship. He's also a Liverpool supporter, so I take this opportunity to wish him a happy birthday. And then asking where's the party. We need some small action.
Then there's a young friend of mine, Bawa Idrisu, of our youth working committee. Today happens to be his birthday. Happy birthday to him.
All right. Let me also say good morning to Dr. Bernard Tutu Boahin, political strategist. Good morning, Doc. How are you doing? Good
morning. I'm good. And good morning to my panelists or colleague panelists. It's been a good, meetings so far, and I just want to assure Honorable Eduji not to get scared, because of whatever is happening within the Gulf. I mean, these are issues that will come and go. The only thing is that in the midst of the storm, you need to take certain decisions. That probably will inure to your benefit and enhance your administrative abilities and all that. So we are with him. Whatever it is Ghana first. So Absolutely. Whatever contribution that we will give to him to make sure that he succeeds, as the acting CEO of MPA, we will do that.
Absolutely. All right. Now let's lay the foundation for our discussion this morning. Now, recent military tensions in the Middle East, particularly the U.S. attacks on Iran, have triggered a rise in global crude oil prices, intensifying uncertainty in international energy markets. Now, for Ghana, a country heavily reliant on imported petroleum products, these developments pose significant challenges to fuel price stability, and economic resilience. Now, despite recent appreciations of the cedi and temporary relief at the pumps, experts warn that sustained geopolitical shocks could reverse gains and strain Ghana's fuel supply and pricing mechanisms. Now, this morning's discussion will explore the multifaceted impact of the crisis on Ghana's energy sector and the government's response to safeguard consumers and the economy. And that's why I said that it's very good that we have Eduji in the building with us this morning so we can better appreciate and understand what missiles flying between Iran and Israel really have to do with us here in Ghana. Let's take a look now at a compilation of what has transpired so far. Let's listen to leaders in the USA, leaders in Israel and in Iran as well, to put some more context to our discussion this morning.
Report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
This operation was designed to severely degrade Iran's nuclear weapons infrastructure. It was planned and executed across multiple domains and theaters with coordination that reflects our ability to project power globally with speed and precision at the time and place of our nation's choosing. This was a highly classified mission with very few people in Washington knowing the timing or nature of this plan. And it appears that Iran's surface-to-air missile systems did not see us. Throughout the mission, we retained the element of surprise.
We will give the same response to the United States as we have gave to Israel. We will respond strongly and we will stop aggression from any side, be it Israel or the United States. And we have given message to the United States that we will respond very firmly and we will stop the aggression by anybody, including the United States. Nobody should expect Iran to show any kind of restraint.
And as you can see, geopolitical tensions rising indeed. Let me take you through a few slides again to put into some context what a sustained or prolonged war between these nations could mean for us here on home soil. We're looking at the price of Brent crude oil, and I mentioned that these tensions and attacks on Iran have triggered a rise in global crude oil. You take a look at how it has traveled from the start of the year, January 2025, all the way through up until June. And you're looking just below some $75 per barrel, some $75 per barrel. As at the time that this graph was put together, some $74, just a little over $74. That's the price that you would be looking at per barrel for Brent crude oil. This morning, our cursory checks indicate that that's further gone up. You're looking at about some $77 US. But how much do we really spend on importing oil every month? Let's take a look at that. Our bill every month for importing oil is some $400 million US. That's a hefty price indeed. That's how much money we are spending. So, of course, it's important for us to think about how we cushion ourselves in the coming weeks and months. Lawyer Duji, let me come to you and find out what concrete measures that the NPA has put in place to ensure that we are getting uninterrupted fuel supply. You made mention of how much supply we have. Are you confident that that will cushion us as we see how this tension unfolds?
Okay, so I think let me say that from the president's point, there is a government committee chaired by the Chief of Staff that works on the issues of energy security, because it's of prime importance in terms of priority to government. That one, we have the needed stock of petroleum products. Two, the needed stock of what you say electricity in the country. So there's a whole committee that the president has put in place. Thankfully, my minister, who is hands-on, coordinates all these activities to ensure that the country's energy security is not compromised at any point whatsoever. Now, what we have done, obviously, at our end, is that thankfully we have enough stock currently in the country. It's not like on the sea or something. Currently, we have enough that, quote unquote, if we don't get any coming in, at least for 2 months, we can have the needed, what shall I say, fuel products to keep this country going. But it's also important to make the point that the bulk of our petroleum products is imported, the bulk. In Ghana today, we have thermal oil refinery that's supposed to do 45,000 barrels of crude daily. We also have Central refinery that is supposed to do additional 40 to 45,000 barrels of crude daily. We also have some smaller refineries that will do 4,500 barrels. These are quite small, you know. And however, these refineries are not, quote unquote, producing as expected. So there's a heavy reliance on products from abroad. Thankfully, our neighbor, Nigeria, through Dangote and others, also have products. And immediately, you cannot say that they are directly impacted, save the cost of what you call crude oil. You'll notice that crude oil prices today have moved from $60 to almost $74, $78. Now, the reason is really not because crude oil production had fallen. No. Almost all the major production ends are producing. So Saudi Arabia is still producing. Yeah. The problem has come about largely because of what you call vessel availability. Now, you'd also notice that one of the major transport ends or hub when it comes to tanker movement and others, particularly from the Arabian Sea into the open sea, had to do with the Strait of Hormuz, which borders Oman, Iran, and some other countries, Kuwait and the rest. And you know, those are where they produce more of the natural gas, more of black gold, among other things. And so once you have that place almost becoming a theater of military prowess, who is mighty and who is not, it will impact on who and what vessels are willing to move products on that corridor. And so now the bigger problem is the issue of vessel availability and also the insurance that you need to pay, because once there are potential for anything military-wise, persons who transport these products are much concerned. And so you are likely to pay higher insurance premium even to get your product moved within because of the risk associated. And so the real cause in terms of the increase in the price is really not what I'll say lack of production, but the process of moving the product. So the freight cost is really what is raising the price from $60 to $74. That's really where the problem is coming.
So that is you say the risks that would be involved if you were transporting via the Strait of Hormuz. That's what will put an extra premium on your insurance and drive the cost up.
Because one of the border country is Iran.
Okay.
And then Oman, Kuwait, and the rest on that stretch. And so once you have that imminent danger, you want to underwrite the risk. And so you pay higher premium for it. And so that is really where the problem is coming from, and not necessarily a cut in production. Now, unlike countries like Russia and others that produces more, Saudi Arabia and co, they are not really the center or the epicenter of the conflict. It is Iran. And because of the movement and vessel availability among others, that is really where the impact is coming from. But you cannot also discount the fact that the conflict in and of itself will have an impact on the pricing. But if you look at it globally, the greater impact is coming from the cost of freight, of moving product within. And you know, the interesting part is that it's the shortest route into the OPC. So most shipping lines prefer using that route, which is cheaper and shorter, because the shorter the distance, the lower the cost. And so if you have to divert into other ends to get to the markets in Europe and the Asian countries and others, it will cost you more. Because a journey that can, say, take a week, if it's going to be 2 weeks, it will cost you more. And those people are not Father Christmas. They'll put the price, the cost that they are incurring onto the price of the product. And so basically, now what we are hoping for, and at this point, I want to activate my belief in the sense that, you see, China, Russia are critical allies of Iran. China depends a lot on its crude consumption on Iran. Russia obviously does its own thing, but it's a key ally of the Iranian current regime. I've already read in the news interventions from Putin, the Chinese leaders, among others, to keep that particular place open up for further transport. My hope is that at least in the next 2 weeks, we'll have a better and deeper appreciation of the actual impacts of what the issues are. The immediate fear is the threat of closure of the straits, the immediate threat to close it.
In fact, the impression is that that is, pending. That's the next step that we're going to see from Iran.
So if you look at how, in terms of the what we call the geology of the place, more or less, it's Iran and Oman. So Iran cannot take a unilateral decision that we are completely closing that end.
All right, and you can take a look on your screens to better visualize what it is that we're talking about, the countries in question there. You see where Iran is. If we can make it a bit smaller, you'll get a better appreciation of what we're referring to, the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, but do carry on.
So thanks for the picture. But you'll notice that Oman is on one side, Iran is on the other side. So Oman will not permit, because once they use that, it is income to those countries, because the ships and others pay for the use of that end. And so what is going to happen is that Oman is not going to allow for a unilateral decision to just close that end completely. Again, like I pointed out, the Chinese have a lot of interest in terms of movements of goods and other services, or movement of goods, more or less, to the Chinese and other South Asian countries. And so they also have an interest to ensure that the passage is not closed. And so there are a lot of interests involved, and more importantly, the Europeans as well, because then, beyond crude, it's easier for you to move liquefied natural gas and others into Europe to power households and others around that corridor. So completely having it closed will be quite an interesting. On the Saturday evening, there was an emergency UN Security Council meeting.
That's right.
I observed it because, I've become my mind is on these matters in recent times just to ensure that I have a further. And from the UN Security Council meeting, it does appear that there's a greater call for diplomatic intervention than a full-blown, full-scale war within the region. Thankfully, Oman, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and co within the region appears to have adopted a strategy for less military intervention. Now, the danger is if the whole Gulf end is engulfed in war, then production itself will be affected. Now, if production itself is affected, that is when the problem becomes like in terms of impact, will become much more serious. So at this point, all we can pray for is the key leaders within the region to come together to de-escalate the current conflict and more or less find a more diplomatic solution to it. And I'm very confident that this one, there's a high possibility of it coming closer or down than what we are seeing, say, like Russia, Ukraine.
Okay, you see that there is some efforts at possible de-escalation.
Yeah, because of the interest. You see, Russia, Ukraine, the narrative is a bit more different.
Right.
But when you compare US, Israel, and Iran, so far, it's only these three. But Russia, China, and others have a greater interest in not having this whole thing become a full-blown conflict, war. And so we are very confident, and like the president pointed out earlier in his statement, the government itself is monitoring. But thankfully, one of the things that we're also doing is that government itself, through the Minister of Finance, is working on the stability of the city.
Because that's very vital.
Very vital. Because in Ghana, there are two principal determinants of commodity price, petroleum pricing, the FOB pricing and the exchange rate. So usually what you want to do is to find out the impact of each one of them. The FOB had to do with all the things that we've talked about. Then the exchange rate, our finance ministers, Bank of Ghana and others. So far, the city had maintained a certain relative stability. If we're able to maintain it to the end of the year, and usually for the exchange rate, from August, September, business people begin to order for products for Christmas and others.
That's right.
And so you want a situation where if we're able to scale that period, we are good to go. Because that is usually the time when the orders are placed. That is usually when the demand for dollars goes up. And basically, if you look at the economics of demand and supply, you will see where the impact is coming from. So we are very confident that to the end of the year, the city will be relatively stable. We will maintain the 10.5, 10.3 throughout the year, and we'll be good to go.
Certainly. Ediji, thank you so much for that foundation. When I come round next to you for your second bite, I want us to talk about how we cushion ourselves from a global impact. We talk about TOR, talk about Sentio. Let's talk about what we can do moving forward so that we don't really bat an eyelid when we see that tensions are brewing in other nations. Doc, let me come to you next then. As a political strategist, how do you assess government's communication or their crisis communication around this time? And also linking that to the decision to suspend that 1 cedi per litre of fuel levy. Let's put that all together and what sort of optics this government is putting out.
All right. I think that so far it's been good. When it comes to transparency and the fact that government is trying to let the people of Ghana naturally know whatever is going on. For me, I think that as a scholar in political communication and political relationship marketing, one of the key things that I feel should be done by governments is the fact that, you need to communicate your intentions, your policies, your achievements, to your audience. I mean, the people who voted you into power. For them to know exactly, what you are doing well and what you are not doing well. In other words, the communication that you put out there, the feedback that you get, could determine whether you are doing well or not, and probably what you have to do to shape the lines and to deliver with the satisfaction and expectations, of your major stakeholders. I also want to commend, EDG and the government, as well as the other stakeholders within the petroleum enclave, for setting up, having discussions, and to suspend the 1 CD. We were here on the platform, and then we did some discussions indicating that even though government may need money to help, protect the energy sector, i.e., Electricity Company Ghana, it is also important for the government to also know that the 1 CD tax imposition, probably is going to lead to an increment, and which, of course, it turned out to be, and that the most important thing was that government probably will look for other sources of funding, rather than probably imposing. Again, you see, that one is just falling in line with whatever that decision, I mean, the suspension is falling in line and giving a better boost, with regards to whatever is happening within the Gulf region. What it means is that if the 1 CD tax imposition had come, right, and then the Gulf crisis, is going to also escalate into something uncontrollable. What it means is that there's going to be a further increase, all right? And when that happens, Ghanaians, irrespective of the good things that we have done, the only single probably bad thing or the unfortunate thing that comes across is what people are going to, carry around, and then probably give a dog a bad name and then hang it. Now, I feel strongly, I think that Eduji made a point about the CD, and the significant gains that the CD is making. I feel strongly that the CD can come below 10 CDs. It can come below 9 CDs.
You feel strongly that we can do better than what's happening at the moment?
As I talk to you now, if the government means to do it, they can do it.
What are some of the factors that you say that would influence us going below that 10 CD threshold?
Yes, you see, basically, I think that my colleague Eduji will understand what I'm saying. But you see, when you look at all the push and pull factors that is driving the CD down, all right, I think that we need to make it a deliberate attempt. You see, I just don't want to go so much deep into some of the issues, all right? But I feel that the government can still, with the help of Bank of Ghana, can still drive the CD further down, and then probably make further gains that, one, will protect the energy sector, two, that will improve the living standards of people, that one, third, even if the crude oil, shoots up, for a while,
the impact will be
dampened. Sadly.
Right. Dr. Miswaita, could you just a little bit
I'm
on
coming.
on
what he
this one?
said was that he feels strongly that, when the CD gain more weight and they're able to stabilize it, it will probably, neutralize whatever effect that will come. All right. And I share in that perspective. All right. I see from was it the redenomination of the city in Kufuor's time? Yeah. Okay. When the city was, let's say, 1-to-1, business people were doing business. They were still making profits. When it got to $1 to 5 cedis, business people were still making profits. So I don't see why any business person will make that assumption that, look, when we reduce the city further, importers and exporters are going to suffer. I don't share in that view. All right. Secondly, I believe that, look, government equally exports, isn't it? The crude oils and all that. Government
exports. So if
exports.
you're a net exporter or this, the impact will be different.
Exactly. Even recently, Statistical Service came up to say that we've gotten trade balance. All right. What it means is that our net export is almost equal to, or is equal to the net import. Now, so when the city gains weight, we are making profit as a nation. So we need to look at some of these things.
Right.
Now, I think he also mentioned TOR, right?
Yes, I wanted to ask about, the measures that you are alluding to that government can take to further, give some strength to this city. Now, listening to the opposition NPP, for example, members of parliament, they make the argument that that's because government has tightened its purse too much and is not releasing the requisite funds where they should go. And that's something that we need to also be thinking about as we progress. I don't know whether you have heard those,
I've heard it. That
argument being made, and how you can situate that in this conversation. When you say that government can do more, are you referring to a more tightening of, or further tightening of government's purse to the detriment of certain areas?
I don't exactly know what you mean by government tightening its purse. But then, prudent, expenditure is very important, even in our daily lives, all right? And so if you are government and you are prudent, it helps protect the public purse. You're able to save, Secondly, if you are able to tighten, every corner to ensure that there are no leakages, you are still saving, all right? And it is clear that we spend $400 million. Is it a month?
Every month we are spending $400 million.
Now, if TOR, we spend money to ensure that TOR is operating, and today I heard that TOR is going to resume full operation in November, all right? Now, if TOR is going to resume full operations in November, what they are saying is that they will cut the $400 million a month by half, meaning we are saving $200 million. What does it mean to the strength of the city? What does it mean, to development? What does it mean to the economic, development of this country? You understand? The same applies to rice and the rest. To over 200 million to 300 million spendings on rice importations and all that. You get it? So I feel that tightening, may be a vague word that any, politician may want to use if you are not able to explain what you mean by tightening, government expenditure. But I feel that, some of these things are maybe difficult decisions. But if a government is willing and committed to it, it means that that government can actually bring a lot more gains that will help the ordinary person on the street, as compared to, just construction. Where I sit, construction doesn't win elections. All right? What matters to voters is their level of, living standards.
Right.
Okay, so you realize that any time that people begin to talk about rising cost of living, then it means that that government is in trouble. Else, Kufuor's government wouldn't have suffered. Then people could have broken the 8 in 2008. You see, John Mahama could have also retained power in 2016 because of the development he brought. I mean, I was even fascinated seeing the kind of medical facilities he built. All right. But again, what do we see? They still lost because people were crying that we don't have money. Cost of living is high. And see, and that is why some of these things we need to probably consider. I just want to go straight to the implications of, you know, these rumors about the closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
Yes.
You know, for me, I don't think that Iran's position, you know, to probably close it, which is equally subject, you know, to the approval of the Supreme National Security Council of Iran, you know, to give the final verdict. I don't think that that should be a retaliation to the U.S. Okay, if they are going to use it as a retaliation to the U.S., okay, U.S. will not suffer.
About 400 miles away.
Yes, U.S. actually will not suffer because they have oil reserves.
So tactically, it wouldn't
It will be a punishment to the rest of the world.
Okay.
Okay, so you want to... Ghana didn't attack your nuclear facility.
That's right.
All right. And you are saying that something that brings comfort to the rest of the world, you are going to close it. I think that that decision should have a better, you know, explanation than what probably they want to do. Again, Edwiji was right when he talks about Iran's relationship with Russia and with China. China consumes more of Iran's petroleum production. All right. And what it means is that if you are going to close it, what is happening to, you know, the trust that you have, you know, between you and China, the trust component of it. You understand?
Right.
Now, in this world trade, everything has to do with trust.
Indeed.
Yes. So if you bleach that trust, and then China now moves to form partnership with another country, remember that you are in trouble, isn't it? So that is also another thing that Iran, you know, should consider. Again, you know, their relationship with Russia depends so much on these exchanges. All right. And it is very important that don't actually look at what America is doing, but maintain your relationship with Russia and China. Okay. Now, for me, you will see that, again, I'm coming to what Edwiji said about the fleet availability and the cost.
Right.
All right. Now, it is also very understandable with what Edwiji said. Obviously, COVID-19, one of the things that actually caused a very high increase in prices of goods and services was as a result of containers and their availability to move and all that. All right. And so anytime that container charges goes up, fleet charges goes up, it affects prices of commodities and other stuff. So obviously, when that strait is closed, you know, so much containers will be trapped in there. They can't move. Ships will be trapped in there. They can't move. And when they cannot move, it means that the very few ones in there will take advantage of the situation, you know. And so even if you order, even at the same price, it will take time for it to get to your turn, right, for delivery purposes and all that. And that can also lead to shortages. So very few companies in Ghana, for example, who have oil are likely to even increase it. You understand? Because demand and supply factors.
Right.
But I feel that it is very much important that Russia, Saudi Arabia, and other oil-producing countries begin to step up their production, that is, if they can control the Brent crude prices and other, prices. Now, if I understand that 20% of oil production, okay, comes from Iran, all right, some of it goes to China and the rest. Now, what it means is that Russia has the capacity to increase production. Saudi Arabia has the capacity to increase production. We can even take advantage of Ghana. You understand? We equally can increase production. All right. And if we increase production, what it means is that equally we are taking advantage of the problems in there to also cash in. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Yes. And so government can start talking to the oil producing companies in Ghana to see how, some of these, how do we call it, gaps can be managed very effectively. But more importantly, those who have higher capacities, Russia and Saudi Arabia, should think of how to do that so that, it doesn't really affect pricing so much. Already, JP and Morgan has predicted that, it is likely to rise to $130 a barrel, and others have also said that probably, as at Friday, it has increased by $5.
Right.
And it is possible that between $3 to $5, dollars will be added as a result of the conflict within the region and all that. But the closure, if not managed well, could
cause some significant disruptions. Thank you so much for that, Doc. And I am seeing a number of your messages. Do keep them coming across the board. We can see them on YouTube, also on Facebook. This one here from Pepe Lisho says, how does the Iran and whatever else concern us here on home soil? I beg. Maybe you didn't tune in from the start. Let me go to Andrew. You, as a global citizen, and in particular a citizen of Ghana, how does it concern you? This person wants to know what is going on in Iran, missiles flying. Why should we even be bothered? Are you concerned really by how the turn of events have gone up until now? The US of A wading into the conversation and inflaming the tempest even more, from what we can see.
Yeah, so we must all be concerned. Right now, we live in a global village. The linkages amongst nations are massive. What's called? We understand that one of the key issues that drives the way we live is international trade. As in, if Ghana was self-sufficient in terms of if we were able to produce everything we needed, even then would have been concerned about how issues are happening in Iran. You understand? So yes, as in, it impacts us. I know Edu J and my brother have done a good job in terms of the economic impacts. But even politically, there's a massive impact. And I think it is imperative that Ghana has a voice politically in the quest for de-escalation. I think this war or this issue has been 45 years in coming. And I think for me, it exposes a radical lack of global leadership, especially where issues concerns the UN, the US. Because we need to recall that in 1945, after the dire consequences of the First World War and the Second World War, where over 100 million people lost their lives, where people lost their livelihoods, where security of human beings was massively undermined. The world then thought that to avert this, they needed to form the UN, and one of the abiding purposes was so that future generations will not be burdened with the scourge of war. Unfortunately, I think because of lack of principle to the values that ought to underpin international relations, we find ourselves in this sad and unfortunate situation. Because if you analyze issues and if you take into consideration what Israel and the US are claiming to be the reasons for let's say, the attack on Iran, one being their purported proliferation of or amassing of nuclear weapons against the clear terms of the non-proliferation treaty. If you also take into consideration the ideological issues, the fact that Israel believes that Iran constitutes a threat to their very existence based on Iran's old language after what's called the Islamist revolution in 1979. The fact that they've been saying that they will clear the small Satan. You know, they refer to Israel as the small Satan, in the US as the big Satan. And the fact that Israel and the US believe that for a regime that claims that they are going to wipe them off the surface of the world would have nuclear weapons. Indeed, I think the position of the US has always been that Iran must not have nuclear weapons. And I think as in when you follow American politics, that position is pretty clear. I think what divides them is how do you handle the issue.
Right.
Whereas Obama, and that's evidence in the position he took in 2015 with his push for the JCPOA, felt that diplomacy and some kind of treaty was the way to go to avert or to prevent Iran from amassing nuclear weapons. Donald Trump, also evidenced by the fact that in 2018 he pulled out unilaterally, and then yesterday they undertook this was called, is it B2? What's the name of their weapon? B2,
the fighter jets.
The fighter jets. At the end of the day, all what is happening there threatens one, the political stability of the world, threatens the security of the world, threatens the economic stability of the world, and threatens all of our livelihoods. And because of all this, every single person living in this world ought to be interested. Because what happens if, let's say, China and Russia decide to also jump into the fray?
Is that a possibility?
Yeah, it could be a possibility. Because when you study what happened in the First World War, what happened in the Second World War, it's sort of as an issue between two countries. And based on treaties countries had, the alliances countries had forged, people felt that they needed to jump into the fray. Because the Second World War, Germany attacks Poland, Britain declares war on Germany, Italy declares war on Britain, France declares war on both what's called Germany and Italy. Japan then also takes advantage, started conquering countries within the Pacific. They attacked the USA in 1941. US declares war on Japan, Germany. So what is happening there potentially, depending on how the world reacts, depending on how the various alliances react, could potentially lead to a world war. And because of that, we all need to be interested, and the voice for de-escalation needs to be what's called heightened. If there's a time for the UN to take leadership for the purpose for which the UN was formed, if there was a time for the structures, the organs of the UN to be looked at, because for instance, if the premise, if the foundation, if the principle underpinning international relations says that we are all equal, all countries are equal and we are all sovereign, then the whole idea of that Security Council, those 5 permanent members, where just one person can veto a decision, as in whether or not that decision benefits the entire group, ought to be looked at. But having said that, I think domestically, we also need to find a way of create a system where we can withstand some of these global shocks, some of these shocks that, I think 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, just about 4 weeks ago, when we were discussing the $1 issue, who thought that would find ourselves in a situation?
In fact, it
where
wasn't even on the table for us
where
to
just 4 years
contemplate.
ago, the Strait of Hormuz will be, everywhere you pass, Strait of Hormuz. And that's what someone has
In fact, now we even know where all the countries around them are sited.
So it means that in how you push your political policies, your domestic policies, you must always find a room for some of these shocks. And I think it was that thinking that caused in 2015, as in when the ESLA, it was not in the ESLA, in the components of the ESLA, there's a price stabilization, what's called levy. And I think the purpose of that was to deal with some of these situations. That's what real leadership does. You understand? That's what real leadership does. And I think if there's one fundamental mistake His Excellency John Mahama did in 2015. It was his failure to tout some of his achievements. Because looking back, I think that was a decision that had a lot of foresight. That let's take a levy. Let part of that levy deal with some of these, as in stabilizing some of what's called these issues. Now, in the spirit of that, if there's one impact that we are all going to face with, one positive impact, is the likelihood of the price of gold rising. Because the price of gold is likely to rise. Because whenever there's instability or there's a perception of instability in the world, a lot of people tend to want to invest or secure themselves in gold. And so the price of gold will likely rise. I think we need to find a strategy in the spirit of that price stabilization that I'm talking about. What can we do with the likelihood of the price, what's called the increase in the price of gold? Also, it is very strategic. And in fact, I was really pleased when I heard the CEO of TOR speak about a situation where TOR is likely to start operations in October, November.
Right.
So clearly, yes, we have issues, we have political issues. I think Ghana needs to take a position. But if there's anything that gladdens my heart, that in this dire situation, we have clearly leadership. As in, for 8 years, we were like a headless chicken. Ghana was like a chicken without a head. We were just going, as in moving aimlessly. And now we have leadership.
So you agree with Doc when he says that so far the optics look good. You are impressed, or at least you are happy with how government has handled the communication on this crisis and their decisions they've made so far as we progress?
I think the focus for me is not just about the communication, because I think if I had any criticism about that one CD levy, it was, I think, government's inability to communicate it well. But clearly what we have right now is clear leadership, strong leadership that at least seems to suggest that it is acting in the interest of the Ghanaian. You understand? And because of that leadership, and already you see the impacts, our economic outlook has been, as our grade has left a junk status to B. That is really positive.
Talk about our recent Fitch rating.
Yeah, it's left what's called junk. We were junk. Now we are B. You understand? You talk about how His Excellency has handled so many issues. You remember about a week ago, he had how he handled the closure of Asase Radio, and he showed leadership there. Yeah, yes, and he showed strong leadership, as in you see the realignment of how politics is done. Because going to the 2024 elections, I think we couldn't have had a debate about the fundamental loss of credibility in political leadership and in the economy. But you see a restoration of all that. And I'm saying because of all this, I believe that Ghana is in a better position to withstand these global shocks. You understand? And I think we are fortunate that, and I think it's probably an act of providence, that when we were voting, we didn't know that all these things were going to happen. But because of the clear leadership, strong leadership, it's not about strong man leadership, but leadership of value and principle, and a strong commitment to giving leadership that benefits the ordinary people of Ghana. I think we're in a better position to withstand the shocks that Israel and Iran can or will bring. But having said that, I think that the U.S. itself, because after 1990, we have a unipolar world now. I think the U.S. itself should show strong leadership now in finding ways of de-escalating. And it's unfortunate that the position they have taken has made the diplomatic angle a bit more difficult.
Right.
But they find themselves in a position where, based on their personal relationship with Israel, and the fact that they've because of the sanctions they've levied on Iran, they can use those to de-escalate the issue, because that's what we need right now. We don't need another war.
Absolutely. Andrew, thank you so much for that, and also for giving us some background intel there. Yeah. I see you're well-versed in the World War matters, giving us some, connecting the dots as to what happened in World War I think it was one that you were
One and
alluding
two.
to.
Both
One
of
and
the two.
two.
Both one and two.
One and two. I think when we have some deeper discussions, we'll certainly put you on the panel and get some more context. But let's also jump onto Zoom right about now and speak with Duncan Amwa, Executive Director, Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, COPEC. Mr. Amwa, hello, good morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning to your panel.
Thank you for making time to speak with us on the program. And you've been on this journey with us over the last few weeks as we've analyzed these tensions. And now things have truly escalated with the U.S. wading into the conversation. And by wading into the conversation, I mean actually throwing missiles in the direction of Iran's security installations and the like. Now, what immediate impact have the U.S. attacks on Iran had on global oil prices? We talk about its increase. But further to that, how is Ghana feeling this impact? How should Ghana be bracing herself for further impact?
Thank you once again. Indeed, the United States up until Saturday midnight could have been the best country to probably call a truce between the two feuding nations. Unfortunately, it took sides by also going in drop some bombs on Fordo and the other two supposed nuclear sites. So that would leave the world watching whether indeed there can be an end in sight anytime soon. And as a fallout from that, one of the quickest things you've seen Iran attack yesterday, if you got news reports of their parliament indicating they were blocking the Strait of Hormuz, they are quite mindful of the fact that that has a lot of geopolitical consequences. And that consequence cannot, be underestimated. You are talking of the possibility of a surge in global petroleum pricing or energy pricing, mindful of the fact that you are doing about 22-25% through that passageway. That would have a telling on Ghana indeed. If you speak to some of the players, even as of yesterday night, the BDCs, the OMCs, you get the indication that clearly they will have to start stocking up because they are not too sure where exactly this is going to lead. And then again, we are all aware that the next window is likely to see some increases. And then you have a situation that is rather escalating quickly. And so there's a potential that the increase may come a bit huge. On this, I would say that I think the president's decision earlier to shelve the One Ghana city was timely. The energy minister did this bit, was very timely that they decided, together with the finance minister and the GRA, to shelve it. Other than that, you cannot imagine how frustrated we would all be feeling at this point. But that said, the escalations across the globe currently will not all be bad for Ghana. Don't forget, Ghana is also a petroleum exporting nation. And so anytime you have prices move from the 60s to the 70s, and this morning the expectation is that it will cross the 80 mark. What it means is that Ghana could also rake in a little more from petroleum exports. That's one positive fallout that Ghana should get. To the negatives, however, because you import a lot more by way of finished products using the dollar. Anytime there's a surge in price, it means that your import bill or importation cover would go up necessarily. Again, you would also have a situation where gains that have been substantially made by the current government would be threatened because you don't want to see fuel prices go back to the 15 region from where the government inherited it. But this single act could say it pushed to that region in no time. That calls for a need to re-strategize. You cannot continue to have a situation where you import to consume. There's no strategy. You only have the BDCs bring in. We put some across the pump, some at the depots, and then we fold our hands, we go to sleep.
Right.
That era has got to end somewhat. You have strategic buffers like BOST that you would need to reposition. And I have said this time without number. You cannot continue to treat BOST as though it was just another BBC that should also go and buy and sell. The bulk oil storage in itself from 93 when it was put in place should have had a semblance of the Oklahoma cushioning that the United States would fall on in these times when global market prices surge. The American government would always have that, option of falling on their cushioning, where the government would now pump some, millions of barrels to their refineries to process and to put on their markets to leverage or to sustain prices. Unfortunately, we are treating our cushioning buffers as though we put them there for the economic good to make profit. BOST is not set up to make profit, and I would argue this any day. We paid for BOST with gold monies, mindful of the fact that we would need those buffers in times like these. Unfortunately, we've departed completely from that agenda, and we are pursuing our own different agenda. And anytime I hear BOST is rather declaring profits and patting themselves on the back, I always say that we've clearly missed our way. You need BOST to keep about 70% of their tanks for strategic stock, keep 30 for trading purposes so that they can do refreshing of the products or cargo from time to time. Unfortunately, that strategic buffer, we do not have a single liter as of today, and that is worrying. Then you have a clear leadership in place at all that seem to know what to do. But as to whether they are being supported, they are being helped to be able to come on stream, I do not think the response will be a very positive one from me. You have BOST saying that, Tor saying they are hoping by September they could come back on stream, put a plant on. You don't have that much time. I have seen a plant audit that indicates that the plant can be restarted today if they had the crude to work with. And so I would urge government not to sit on the fence, go to their aid, whatever necessary logistics or investments that they need. If we could put in some to ensure that there is petroleum security from that corridor, we should do it. Not only Tor. You have a private refinery called Centro that also came up a year or so ago that is struggling woefully. And so you end up wondering whether indeed we do not see the prospects in refining, but we'll rather take dollar to go to Europe, to refineries in Europe and bring finished products. This is a wake-up call because, as I indicated, if the Strait of Hormuz is to get blocked today, what it will mean is that there will be a spike in global fuel prices. You may even be lucky to land products because cargoes will not be moving as freely as you would expect them to move. And so you would need to localize or nationalize your response. I do not see this response forthcoming. I do not see that we have actually prepared. It's been a couple of days since the Iran-Israel feud. Countries that have been observing seem to be putting in place their own strategies to mitigate this. I do not see a strategy in Ghana in place. And so, as price takers as we are, this week, prices may go up on the international markets. The BDCs will land products. They would have to add the new prices. You and I would have to pay for it. Meanwhile, you have strategic buffers in BOST and Tamoyo refinery and other refineries that we are simply failing to take advantage of. So this should be a wake-up call. The September deadline that I'm hearing from Tor sounds good to the ear, but you don't have that much time at this point. Whatever we can do, if it means that we should talk to our Jubilee partners or international oil companies that operate here to cede part of their liftings to the local refining space, we should begin having those conversations in order that Tor could at least step in at some point if cargo is not coming in as rapidly as we would expect today. We should also be able to have a certain arrangement that gives us some money to be able to hold strategic stock for our people, so that if tomorrow, of course, it escalates any further as Iran is threatening, Ghana should be able to have a response that supports its people without waiting on the geopolitical tensions. These are my initial thoughts. Though, like I indicated, all of these happenings will not be entirely negative, because as an oil producing and exporting country, you are likely to benefit from those price shocks or surges as they happen. But we need to also put in place some effective protectionism mechanisms so that our locals do not get charged the $100 per barrel or 143 as happened under former President Kufuor, if you recall, when Iran, Iraq, the US invasion of Iraq and all of that. Things did escalate quickly. You ended up seeing on the global stage $143 a barrel. Ghana was left battered. At the end of the day, it did cost the then government a lot of goodwill. And I think that this government should start planning in earnest. This week should not go without any buffers being put in place altogether.
My questions. It's almost as if you were reading my mind. I thank you for your perspectives. They're talking about our dependence on imported refined petroleum products and what we should be doing or what government should be thinking about moving forward. Some great suggestions there. Again, Duncan Amwa is the Executive Director, COPEC Ghana, that's Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. And Eduji, I finish off this particular topic with you. A lot has been said about the timelines for TOR to be back on stream, and Mr. Amwa there says that he wants to see more of a strategy on what government has planned in the coming days and weeks. I'll give you just about 2 minutes so we can talk about our next topic, please.
Well, like I indicated to you, government itself has a committee on energy security. At a broader level, I want to limit my conversation to the things that are within my pay grade. There are other matters that the sector minister and all the technical advisors within that space would have to input. Matters that relates to how TOR becomes operational, how we build our strategic reserve. There have been even calls that we introduce what you call a restocking of our strategic reserve. There has also been a conversation as to what exactly should be the mandate of BOST. Now, because some of these things particularly relate to the work being performed by colleague CEOs, I wouldn't want to veer so much into that space. What I am encouraged is that as we speak, everything that we need to do to keep a certain level of stock in order to ensure that we do not have panic purchases at our pumps, we are doing that. What we are also looking at, and like the president himself pointed out, is the fact that we are basically observing totally what is happening within the Gulf region to see the impact on crude prices, among other things. Like I pointed out earlier, the issue is really not about production fall, but the associated impact on the cost of freight, particularly within that particular, the Strait of Hormuz and among other things. So I'm just confident that I think we've gotten to the peak of the conflict with the intervention from the U.S. It cannot be worse at this point. And so I'm very confident that with China, Russia, and others getting involved, from the point of diplomatic engagement and non-military involvement, I'm very confident that the tension in that area will de-escalate. And that, if that happens, the possibility of crude prices getting to $80 may be completely minimized. So we're just still studying. It's too early days yet. Yeah.
All right, certainly. Thank you for that. I'll read a few of your messages and then we'll quickly get into the next subject matter on the table this morning. Olawale Badmus says, nothing is wrong if Iran punishes the rest of the world. We've been quiet and America has broken these international rules and attacked Iran when America knows that there are big consequences to the world. Okay, a number of you getting into the actual geopolitics of it all. Let me stay within my lane, shall I say, and think about what affects us here in Ghana. Elik Plim has this to say. He says, the panel this morning has discussed the issues in the interest of Ghana and not for any political party. Thank you, gentlemen, for that. He says, Akbenami. This one also coming from Anthony Kujo. He says, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah did everything for us to be truly independent, both political and economic. And for some miscalculated reasons, we have destroyed all of that. Today, matters that are far from us and do not concern us are now creating economic discomfort for us. Our Tema oil refinery must be used for refining our crude. All right, Hamid Yusuf says, but for Boston tour should have been our savior in times like this. The institutions should not be taken for granted. Washington Yankee says, a very in-depth and knowledgeable exposition in the field of oil and petroleum energy. And that's coming from Washington. He's speaking about Mr. Duncan Amoa. Okay. Some of you asking what time I get off this morning. That's neither here nor there. Let's move on to our next conversation. And it's one that I know you're all very interested in. The Electoral Commission's decision to rule out an immediate rerun of the Ablekuma North parliamentary election has sparked debates over electoral transparency, legitimacy, and political stability. Now, as stakeholders weigh the implications of this ruling, questions arise about the integrity of Ghana's electoral processes and the mechanisms available for resolving disputes. And I hope that in that short time that we have, some 11 minutes or so, we can examine the political and institutional dimensions of the EC's decision. Doc, I only have about 2 minutes to give you, but I do want you to wade into the matter. The EC has ruled out an immediate rerun, and with the two sides, the NDC and the NPP, still going back and forth, how do we resolve this issue once and for all? Ablekuma North constituents are without an NP, and we know what that conversation, brings about, what that conversation sparks when we leave constituencies without representation.
So, Helen, for me, Ablekuma North and South, decisions coming out of Ablekuma and South are very unfortunate, very much unfortunate. For me, it speaks or it sets certain bad precedents, within our democracy. Again, it is an affront to the kind of democracy that we are developing. I want to believe that if South was bad, Ablekuma is equally bad. I want to also state that, we should give democracy, the free will to move. All right? And when you look at the positions of both NDC and MPP, it probably begs the question as to whether we need to conduct the whole exercise again. All right. I wouldn't say that it is unfortunate regarding the position of Dr. Bosman, that rerun is impossible. What is impossible under the sun? The explanation he gave is that from where we have come to where we are now, several attempts, to continue with the coalition exercise have not materialized. Again, High Court rulings, have also not been implemented. And you still insist that, okay, let's go on to, let's continue with the process with regards to just 3 polling stations. That's fine. You see, from where I sit, what he is trying to explain is that probably when we don't continue, to bring the 3 police station results, right, maybe another kind of precedent will be set where maybe, I've heard people discussing this, and that is why I am putting it in, that when it is not allowed to continue, a precedent will be set whereby in future elections, results will be taken off by a certain political party who probably sees that we are losing, okay, burn the results, and then the next time is that we should go and rerun. You understand? Again, you see, if you are EC boss and you don't think outside the box, and then you sit down for some of these things to happen, then for me, it is quite unfortunate. My reason is this: technology has emerged and it has advanced. All right? So you could have, at the polling station, quickly find, a kind of innovative, measures where the moment where, results are declared, it gets into the EC national system, so that we don't even struggle with some of these things.
Right.
All right. Now, you realize in 2024...
And that just another minute for me or less, please.
Yes. The 2 major political parties had a more advanced, election systems, more than the EC itself. And I was wondering why. You understand? Now, so for me, I think that part of the problem is coming from the EC. And so for now, they should look out for a more strategic means of dealing with this particular issue.
All right, and in the absence of that, just one question, yes or no, to rerun or not to rerun?
Yes, for me, rerun would do.
Rerun. All right, Andrew, to rerun or not to rerun?
At least for the 3 police stations,
yes.
I think that's they should rerun, because at the end of the day, if the AC say that no rerun, then he should, the AC should tell us, because we see we can't have a repetition of the SAL issue. It goes against everything that our democracy stands for. We can't afford to have a situation where even just a single Ghanaian is without representation at the house of democracy. That's what I tend to call parliament. You understand? So for me, if it's just 3 police stations, that's the reason for which the EC is unable to declare. And if the EC think that they can't do anything about those 3 police stations, I think common sense ought to dictate.
What about those who say we should do for all the 60 plus, I believe 62 police stations? Should we rerun for all the police stations?
No, because I don't think there's for the 59 police stations there's any contention as to the veracity or not of the results there. It's just 3 police stations.
That's right.
You understand? And so at least for those 3 police stations, I think that there ought to be a rerun, so that this matter is put toward the bed. Then our compatriots in Ablekuma North can also have their voices heard in Parliament. We can't have a repetition of SAL.
Lawyer DG, your fight on this one.
I think that listening to the 2, I see a sense that maybe not properly briefed on the issue.
Okay.
So 2 weeks ago, the Electoral Commission called the political parties, myself as the Director Legal of the party, with my Deputy General Secretary, Barbara Sawa, my senior brother, Tanko Computer, Madi, were the ones that represented NDC.
Okay.
The MPP had Evans Nimakun and Honorable Ebenezer Nati, the former MP, on the way forward, on agreeing on a roadmap. And we gave an indication to them that the Electoral Commission is not putting the narrative out clearly. What is the issue? Ablekuma North has a certain number of polling stations. After the election, there were contention about 62 of the polling stations. 62. Of that 62, we brought what we call carbonated copies. Carbonated copy, 54. The MPP brought carbonated copy of 25. The EC agreed to accept ours. By accepting ours, it will leave 62 without carbonated copies. The MPP managed and brought 25 carbonated copies. So at the meeting, I said, look, under the circumstance, we were initially pushing for a rerun in the 62 polling stations.
Where there are contentions.
Where there are contentions. Then Madame Jane Mensah said, okay, since they have accepted our 54 carbonated copies, in fairness, we should accept the MPP's 25 carbonated copies. I said, no. I mean, for the sake of fairness, why not? Now, it will be left with 37. The MPP presented scanned copies
Of those 37.
of those 37. Then we said, no, we can't accept scanned copies because per the CI governing the election, you are not supposed to use scanned copies. Then they said, oh, they are pulling, presiding officers have validated those scanned copies. We said, no. On live television, including TV3, the presiding officers came and some said, I didn't know who signed this. And so we said already it raises credibility about those scanned copies. So we can come to a compromise position that let's go and even do the rerun in the 37 polling stations.
Where there are contentions, yeah.
Which is contentious. The EC and the MPP said, no, we should just do it in 3 polling stations. And those 3 polling stations are the typical bantamers in Abdul So we said, it would be against good conscience for the Electoral Commission to go and conduct the rerun or to collate. In fact, the AC even said they will only do collation of the 3. We said, no, let's go back to the 37. And our approach is simple, that we need an approach that factors the interests of the electorates. Because we political leaders cannot sit in that room and take a decision that would disenfranchise about 37 polling stations where the validity of the result, because they are scanned copies, you cannot vouch for it. So our position to the Electoral Commission, which was our proposal, in fact, I gave that proposal, together with my Deputy General Secretary, Lawyer Barbara, and the Madi and Tanko Computer. When we raised the issue, we said this is our proposal in terms of way forward. Then the MPP, through my brother Evans Nimaku, gave a counter proposal. The EC said they will call us back so that we'll see between the two what decision the commissioners have taken. The next time I saw Dr. Bosman in Parliament saying ABC. I said, like, where from this?
You didn't know that he was going to be answering some questions on the floor of Parliament?
No, because we had agreed at the EC. We brought a proposal, the MPP brought a counter proposal, and the expectation is that they will call the two parties to meet. And then they will now inform us that having studied the two proposals, this is what the commissioners think should be the way forward. That's our expectation. Only to see him on the floor of Parliament. So I was taken aback. I said, no, Doc, this is not what we agreed. That is your view. A view we strongly said no. It didn't make sense that you, the commissioners, together with the political party, can agree that it didn't matter what happened in 37 of the polling stations. We should limit the conversation to only 3. Yeah. And in fact, I remember saying before the commissioners that, look, these 3 are the typical MPP strongholds in the constituency. And so agreeing that we should go and have it or collate the results in only these 3 is as good as saying that declare the MPP the winner. Yeah. And so for fairness, limit the election to 37 polling stations out of over 200. Once we go through that, the electorates in that place have been part of the solution to the problem. This is what we propose to the Electoral Commission. Right. Only to see them, Dr. Bosman in Parliament. How do you resolve the issue of the scanned copies?
Yeah, I think that the 62, the rerun of the 62 will be better.
Exactly. There was even a compromise position that so we said, look, since you have the carbonated for 25, we'll concede because we brought carbonated for 54 for fairness. So as for 37, and the 37, guess what? It's made up of 13,000 voters. That alone can decide a significant number. So let's go and have the election in the 37 rerun. Why? We are not afraid. And I'm not sure the MPP is afraid that we should go and have a rerun in 37.
You think it's a matter of fear?
I think so. I mean, 13,000, anything.
No, but
and
anything
I mean,
can happen. Well,
you know what? But that's why we want fairness. We are saying that for fairness sake, let's go and have the rerun. We'll go back and campaign in those 37 polling stations. Who knows? The good thing John Mahama has done
the
so
twinkle
far.
in lawyer Eduji's eyes.
You know.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for another impactful
So I think
morning.
this position by the Electoral Commission to limit the conversation to the 3 will not augur well with our democratic, you know, whatever.
Eduji, thank you so much for your thoughts. And gentlemen, thank you as well. Andrea Piadankwa is spokesperson, Movement for Change, also private legal practitioner, giving us his perspectives on the issues this morning. Very grateful to you, Andrew. We also had Dr. Bernard Tutubuahin, political strategist, also giving us his thoughts on the issues we have discussed. Lawyer Eduji Tamaklo is acting CEO, National Petroleum Authority. He has some busy days and weeks ahead of him. We wish him well. Also, Duncan Amwa, Executive Director, COPEC, sharing his thoughts with us this morning. And to all of you who sent in your messages, we're also very grateful for that. There's a lot more right here. If you stick with us on New Day, of course, we're cashing out *439#. Play as many times as possible. You too could be winning 1,000 Ghana cedis going straight onto your mobile device. We will be right back. Don't go too far.